Welcome, 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 everyone. We are live to another episode of Knocked Conscious. I have a new gentleman, Andy Semotiuk. Andy, it's a very interesting story. I used to have two podcasts. I had a serious podcast, which is a Not Conscious, and this funny one called Beer Googles. Andy reached out to me through this matchmaker podcast thing, and he was going to talk about his, I believe, his grandmother and being an opera singer, and his book about comedy writing and his speech. And he had the littlest blurb. All he wrote was, "And I'm a senior advisor at CEED." And something in my ears ticked up. So I knew exactly why Andy reached out. I know it's one of these weird kismet-y things. So Andy, welcome so much to Not Conscious. Please, this is the first time we've ever met. Please introduce yourself. I understand, your profession, where you live, all, general things about yourself. I'd love to hear a little
Sure.
bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is a city in the far north up here in Canada. And it's cold there. So, for example, you have to have a block heater in your car and plug in your car every night during winter, or your car won't start in the winter, like in the morning. So we did that a lot, every night during winter time. And I played hockey, and I grew up there like any other kid, all the sports. But I also spent half my time in Los Angeles because my mother was in Edmonton, and she'd send me down to visit her sister, my aunt Helen, in Los Angeles. And so I went to high school in Los Angeles, Paternoster High, and and that seems to be the way my whole life has gone. That half my time has been in Canada, the other half in the United States. Now, going through school, I guess I went into law school. Like I took aim at law school and decided, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer, and went to law school at UBC in Vancouver, University of British Columbia. And I graduated. And then over the years, I became a member of the bars of uh, British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario in Canada, and New York and Los Angeles, California in the United States, to the point where I'm a US and Canadian immigration attorney now. And I practiced 10 years in Los Angeles, 5 years in New York. And now I'm in Toronto working with Pace Law Firm. Apart from that, in my career, I also had a communications sort of strain in my life. And the communications was first writing, and I became a journalist, and ultimately I became a United Nations correspondent in New York working at the UN. And now I write for Forbes. For 10 years, I've been writing as a contributor to Forbes about immigration. And I also wrote some books. I have the books here in front of me, actually. I've got 5 of them that I've published. And they are books about, one is on comedy, which is the reason why I reached out to you, Mark, but also a book about my great aunt, who was a famous opera star way back in the golden years of opera in the first decade of the 1900s. But it's not a book about opera. It's a book about reaching the very top of your field, and what does it take to rise from obscurity and nowhere and get to the very top, whether it's opera or law or podcasting or whatever it is. So that's
It's about drive,
yeah,
about willpower, drive,
yes,
and those intangibles.
yeah. And then something that may be significant for this discussion is I wrote a book called The Young Professional, which is a book that's it's called A Real World Survival Guide for the New College Graduate, about the 3 things that I notice in most young people that are concerns. And the 3 things are money, time, and balance. So I wrote about those things in that book. And
Very nice.
somehow I found you on our matching podcast page. And I thought, gee, I'd like to go on that guy's program. And I reached out to you, and here I am.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see how we feel at the end of the conversation. To be honest, because it's very interesting. I'm absolutely mesmerized that you're in immigration law. Obviously, we've seen some. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that because we've seen some clear things with the election that happened, the H-1B visa thing. We're talking about the O-1 visa and everybody's conflation of the two,
Oh,
and the different types of things. Would you like to just expound a little bit about that? And then I definitely want to get into CEED and your
oh yeah.
history in that because
You're for Eastern
you're
European
you're
democracy.
gonna you're gonna be surprised with what we're gonna talk about. I'm
Okay,
pretty
okay.
sure.
Well, let's talk about immigration. Uh, I've written a couple of articles recently for Forbes about immigration that may be of interest to listeners. One is about
Absolutely.
deportation and how I take the view that deporting 11 million people is essentially a mission impossible, but they're going to scare a lot of people. They're going to try to scare them out of the country.
Oh, the rhetoric itself is already
Oh,
rising.
yeah,
So
it's
we
there. It's there. Uh, and I write, even if you could, let's say you could get all these 11 million people together in a concentration camp or whatever, somewhere, the countries where they're from have to agree and say, okay, well, we'll take these people back, the ones from our country. That's
I
also,
thought the understanding though, if we did a remain in Mexico type policy, we could export them to the country that they went through because isn't each country supposed to accept them that way and they didn't, they just let them through.
yeah,
So there's arguments can be made there, right?
yes, there could. Challenge we have there is imagine you're the president of Mexico. About 6 million out of the 11 million are Mexicans. So do you want 6 million people returning to you from Mexico back to, from America back to Mexico?
Right.
And those guys are all earning money and sending money to Mexico to support the family and the kids and the grandmas and
Mhm.
etc. So
Right,
it's
but
cut
but
off a
my
livelihood.
biggest concern, one of my concerns, is from my understanding, please
No, no,
explain if
go
I
ahead.
if it's a neophyte understanding.
No, no.
For example, Haiti, people coming through Mexico, that country's supposed to hold them. They are not supposed to let them go
Correct.
through.
That's third
And
country.
they have, and there's been a complete concerted effort to do so.
Yeah,
We've seen the results, right? And
yeah,
even Canada, I think
yeah,
Holve, I think, talked about a 2 million person immigration into Canada of only 30 million people. That is 1 point, what's that? 50, that's a huge chunk.
yeah,
One,
yeah, yeah.
2, 1/6, 1/15 or
Whatever
7%
it is.
increase. Yeah.
It's true. Canada does have a large underground population of people who are undocumented, not quite as big as America. A concern
Um,
Canada has, just as a matter of interest for you, is suppose even 1% of the 11 million decide, I'm going to Canada. Let's see,
mhm.
10% would be 1.1 million.
That's 1/30th, right.
Yeah,
It's
1%.
3%. That would be a 3% change in Canada's population like
Yeah,
that.
like that would be a
In
shock.
addition to the programs that you already have in place. I mean, it's not like America has those, even though they are giving them to the immigrants.
Right.
It's not like that's a part of the national identity yet,
No,
in a national healthcare sense or these
yeah.
other kinds of
So
things.
it's going to be a shock to Canada. Uh, H-1B visas. Look, I just saw a report that a group made about H-1B visas and a rewrite proposing like the problem there is the Congress doesn't work properly. If the Congress could sit down and just talk rationally and reasonably to each other, they could probably sort out that. That's the
I
workforce of the Canadian, not the Canadian,
yeah,
American
yeah.
system. And if they
Yeah.
could just straighten that one out, that would make such a difference. And
Well,
this
I
report,
I can I can speak to that though, Andy. Let's be honest. I'm a critic of all sides of this.
okay,
Because this is where my challenge, I think, lies in on an American side is
yeah,
they don't wanna fix the problem, just like they didn't wanna fix abortion because it's always a talking point. It will always garner votes. It will always garner support, money. Whenever it's under attack, whenever abortion's under attack, Scott, boom, 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 all
money,
these funds start pouring in on the abortion side. Then when immigration starts going crazy, boom, all this funds just pouring, and that's all it is. These are all talking points, rhetoric by our people. They don't want it fixed. As a matter of fact, Marco Rubio, Mr. Gonna be Secretary of State, I believe,
yeah,
correct? He He's helped sign in with Dick Durbin, for example,
Yeah.
500,000 immigrants from Venezuela to destabilize their country,
Wow.
to make them destabilized, not for our benefit, brought them to our country to destabilize them and play imperial mind games. These are the things that we're starting to see, and these are the repercussions. So
Yeah.
what I'm finding is we are the ones. America are the ones displacing all of these people from the Middle East. They send them to Europe, and it seems to be a global initiative to spread everyone out and to have them absorb. And I look at Germany, for example, after
Yeah.
they accepted all those people
Yeah.
in
They
the late
accepted a
90s and
million
2000s.
people. A million people they accepted.
Yeah. So
Uh,
please,
it's a
I'm sorry, I bloviate here, but it's only to kind of share
Oh
where
yeah,
the
yeah. Oh,
frustrations are from those sides.
you
Yeah.
got your finger on the right dial there. That's one of the big things. It's a money grab. It's if you have no scruples and you want to raise money, raise hell about immigration and like all the fentanyl that's coming through and the criminals and all that, and the money starts pouring in, just pouring in.
And the drug
But
war thing too. And the war on drugs does not work.
yeah,
Does not work.
it's not.
Certainly not the way we've done it. I mean, we can talk about a cultural war on drugs, but we can't this is not a it's not a combatant type war thing because we then become the dark market selling drugs to our own inner city to
Yeah,
fund the war to keep it going. I mean, and then we incarcerate these children and they become our slaves for 20 years because they did 3 strikes for holding a possession of some substance that only affects them,
yeah.
that only affects them. And these kinds of things are out of control, in my opinion.
But okay, I'd be interested to hear from you now, Mark.
Yeah.
What's the solution? Because I'm looking for a solution. I don't have a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe you know something that
Well, okay.
could.
So I am a first generation American, and we'll get
Yeah,
into that as we
I
talk later. But
well, okay, I'm the same.
I'm blessed. Yeah, because I know I'm a little bit familiar with your story. I watched a
Yeah,
couple of your podcasts as well.
yeah.
That's why I know that's why it's gonna be very interesting today. I promise you.
Okay, okay.
Um, so I'm a first generation American, and my parents both came here. They met here. Now I am blessed to be in this country. However, with what's happened, the first thing you do to triage a problem is stop the bleeding. We
Right.
need to just lock everything down first. The borders need to be 100% secure, nothing in or out and we just have to start there. We have to
Okay,
tourniquet,
okay,
cauterize the wound. That's the start.
okay,
After that, we then need to be very careful with our motion. But
okay,
until the bleeding stops, we will not get this under control.
okay, Mark. I'll just make this comment about that because I wrote an article about that.
Oh, excellent. Great.
Here's my argument to you. This is a comparison that the criminal justice system does not catch every criminal is not a reason to condemn the criminal justice system. It's got to do the best that it can, and we got to make it the best that it can be. But we will never really probably catch every criminal in America. And I'm afraid the border is the same way. If we're going to have to, I agree with you, got to seal that
Yeah.
sucker up.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid that, whether it's they're going to crawl under or over or around
Right.
or fly over,
And
whatever.
I do understand that is the challenge. And
Yeah.
the point is though, that is no one
You got
talks
to get
about that is
control
what
of it.
has to happen.
Yeah, you have
That I mean, at minimum, it has to be controlled.
yeah,
Our coasts are safe. I mean, our coasts are pretty much safe,
yeah,
but it's that absolute border.
yeah,
We're generally not concerned about the north.
yeah.
So I mean, there can be concerted efforts to work together with
Oh,
Canada to,
Canada's
you know what
really,
I mean?
but since Trump threatened these tariffs, Canada's pumped up their border protection like crazy. It's not even the same, policy anymore. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, something good has happened, I suppose, on that front at least. But we're in agreement on you have to seal the border, control the border to get anywhere otherwise, and then we got to work on the problem.
Yeah. I'm more of a states' rights guy. I'm also a private
Okay.
property guy. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if the federal government this. I think private properties, private citizens can line up on the border if they really want. It's their country that they feel invaded. That
Mhm.
is their sovereignty, in my opinion. The
Okay.
government, and once again, these are just general concepts of
Yeah,
how
yeah,
we feel government's role is in everybody's lives, for sure. So once again, it's a reductionist answer on a podcast,
yeah,
when we
yeah.
talk like that.
Okay.
So Zach, my friend Zach has a good question. What would be the ideal solution for secured vetting of our immigration system in the West?
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to start with the premise. Are we not having a secured vetting system of our immigration system in the West? I think we are. It's not the vetting that's the problem. It's after the vetting and what happens once they get here. So there's a problem. Like, I think most people who are here as undocumented immigrants come probably as visitors, or they come. They're not all sneaky, as sort of sneaking across the border. Most of them come in as visitors, or students or whatever it is, and then they overstay. And now we got 11 million overstays here. Maybe I don't know. Maybe like 3 million are across the border, but most of them, 9 million, maybe overstayed. So the question is, how do you enforce that? And that's a matter of money and effort. And we didn't have the money, and there's not enough effort. So we need to
Yeah, it's
put
a
more
will.
money into it.
I mean, I would argue it's a will issue.
Yeah, yeah,
And once again, it is one of those weird issues that I think one side does capitalize on more than the other.
yeah,
Uh, just the way we discussed that.
yeah.
Is there anything else about the general immigration? What your general thoughts are globally, or even within Canada and stuff
Yeah,
before
okay.
we move
Let
on?
me just for those who are unaware. Right now, there's over 100 million displaced persons with no home in the world. 100 million. No matter how great the American immigration system is going to be, there's no way America can help those 100 million people all come to America or whatever. That means America has to control the immigrants coming into America. It just, some people don't recognize that America has to control it. Like the Congress has to control the number of people that come in. It's just a fact of life. And it does. It sets it's about 1,250,000 a year is what they set as the amount. But then a million come across the border illegally on top of that, or whatever. Right. So
Mhm.
that part is what we were talking about, sealing the border and what has to be done there.
Right.
But the fact that there's 100 million like people with no home is staggering in terms of what we have
It
to do in this world to make things right.
Yeah, but well, and this is where we're going to have different worldviews, right, or kind
Yeah,
of off the bat there, Andy, because this is the issue I have with government is they just globalize your compassion, they weaponize your compassion against me. Because I care just as much for those 100 million displaced people as you do. But if
yeah,
I can't wear my oxygen mask well, and if I'm the one bombing the places to displace them and make their places worth zero as they flee from our 2,000-pound bombs, all due respect, okay, and from our economic sanctions, and how's that working out in Venezuela and Cuba and Russia? It's made actually Russia stronger, put them more in bed with China and Brazil, for example,
yeah,
especially with India increasing their oil consumption of Russia from 2% to 22%, for example.
yeah.
These are the things that American imperialism, it is starting to get the blowback that Ron Paul has warned us of for 20, 30 years.
Okay.
And this is the result. This isn't the start of it. This isn't the problem. This is the effect of the problem that we did with our imperialistic
Well,
nature after
let's
we
ask
became
it.
the global unipower,
I get
after
it.
unipolar moment.
I see where you're headed. I tell you what, was Hitler a problem in World War II?
Not until Churchill made him a problem.
So if it hadn't been for Churchill, Hitler would not have been a problem.
Well, let's get into this. Let's
Okay, let's
absolutely
go
get
for
into
it.
the nuance.
Okay.
So you are Ukrainian American,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, Ukrainian Canadian. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah.
I'm a
No.
German American.
Okay.
So my grandfather was a Nazi soldier. So I
Okay.
can tell you my grandfather was an anti-aircraft gunner in the Nazi regime. My other grandfather was a civilian. My grandfather who came to this country lived under Hitler, Stalin, and Eisenhower. So
Okay.
I can tell you from my history about that. So If
Good.
the nuance of
Good start.
Germany,
Yeah.
when Germany, after World War I, would you argue that the Treaty of Versailles stepped on Germany's throat so strongly and made them so embarrassed and shamed that that blowback created the rise of Hitler? And when he asked for Danzig back and was refused that, that may have been a spark?
Put it this way, it certainly was a spark, and it certainly does help to explain Hitler's rise to power, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So with that, I agree with you
Yeah.
that Hitler Hitler is a fact. So we're going to get into it because let's talk about the Center for Eastern European
Okay.
Democracy.
Let's
Okay,
get into that one.
it sounds because to me it sounds like the National Endowment for Democracy. It sounds like that's Victoria Nuland's outfit. It sounds like the IRI, which is John McCain's MIC head. So please share with me. The CED is the Center for Eastern European Democracy. I'm going to pull up just the website, and I'd love for you to explain everything about it because I don't want to make any assumptions about anything.
Okay, sure, sure.
For sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And I'm happy to discuss it. I'm happy you're, pulling your oars in terms of this discussion and where you're headed. I understand you, and I respect your arguments.
And I don't think we're dissimilar, sir. I really don't think we're dissimilar. I just think we're different. That's all.
So this center, what we're trying to do is this. Someone has a viewpoint. We think it's helpful to what's going on in Eastern Europe. We either publish it under articles by contacting the writer and saying, hey, you wrote a nice article. We'd like to reprint it under articles on the website. If they say yes, then we reprint it as an article on the website. That's one thing we do. Why? Because we like to promote articles that we believe talk sense about what should happen in Eastern Europe. And right now, 90% of Eastern Europe is what's Russia's doing with the invasion of Ukraine. That's the concern. The other thing we do is if someone writes an article that we think is good, we sometimes summarize the article in a paragraph or two, take the hyperlink to the article wherever it was published, and send that summary out on social media saying, hey, here's a good article. Say, for example, one of the generals who might have written an article, saying what should be done with the war in Ukraine or whatever. And we send it out on social media to raise the distribution of that article in the world. And the third thing we're doing is what I'm doing with you right now, which is we're discussing Eastern Europe and in podcasts as guests and so on, enlightening the world as to what's going on. And I think the most critical thing I could share with you about the war in Ukraine is this. In 1994, after the demise of the Soviet Union, Ukraine ended up with the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, strategic and tactical nuclear weapons. And several of the countries were not happy about that. And they called a meeting in Budapest involving the United States, the UK, France, China, and Russia and Ukraine. And they said to Ukraine, you know what? If you surrender your nuclear arsenal to Russia, we will guarantee your sovereignty and independence. And Ukraine said, okay, we'll do it. And they did. But the problem was Russia, this notwithstanding World War I, 30 million dead, World War II, 50 million people dead, all in part about borders in Europe. This is the border. We agree these are the borders. We don't change borders except by agreement. We believe in the rule of law, and the international rules-based order is the way I put it.
Well, by the winners in 1989, after November 9th, 1989, when the Eastern Wall went down.
Well, I guess
when the Berlin Wall went down,
boards.
That was a unipolar moment. Soviet Union was collapsed. It was over. 91, we told them not 1 inch east. Not 1 inch east, we said.
Yeah.
Over and over again. We took Yeltsin, we got him drunk, we told him lies, and we encroached on him inch by inch, and we started taking away land. And you even mentioned in a podcast before, if I may, Niet means Niet. You're very familiar with Niet means Niet.
Yeah, right.
And that was about the red line of NATO absorbing Ukraine.
Well,
and how would you like, let's talk about the nuance of that. At 91, let's go. We'll talk about Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary, 3 already red line states that Russia already had issues with.
Okay.
And that was the first 3. Then it was 7 more countries. All 3 of them or 2 of them shared borders with Russia. So there seemed to be an encroachment issue. Right now, the United States is talking about purchasing Greenland for national security.
Right.
While our weapons are on the border of Russia, and we tell them Monroe Doctrine for thee, but not for me.
Okay, well, hang on. Russia had no problem with Finland and Sweden joining NATO, but it's all excited about Ukraine joining NATO. Why would that be?
Ukraine has been connected inexorably with Russia for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
How many hundreds of thousands of soldiers died to keep the Donbass during the wars in the 1800s, I believe? There were hundreds of thousands of Russians who, and as a matter of fact, I think Russia said, if you want to join, then give what's back to us, Donbass and Crimea, for example. They said that. So they are the ones who gifted it back to Ukraine at that point, right? There was a point where there was a gift of land back, and they feel encroached. Now, I'm sure I'm spouting Putin propaganda points. I'm sure that's what the argument is, but I would argue that there's CIA propaganda points, and all the color revolutions throughout the 90s that the United States, the CIA, and the deep state have backed. I find it very challenging. Once again, I don't want anyone hurt. Ukraine was absolutely attacked incorrectly, unjustified. It is not a justified attack. There is no justification to this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't unprovoked. It wasn't unprovoked.
Oh, okay. I see.
This is the book.
Okay.
Scott Horton wrote an excellent book, 660 pages, 90 pages of citations.
Okay.
Not excusing Putin's actions by any means.
Right.
So my question for you as a Ukrainian,
I
don't want anyone hurt. You don't. They're talking about lowering the military fighting age, the hundreds of thousands. We knew this was not a winning battle from the get-go. We know that Ukraine wanted to fight, but we also know, and I don't know, possibly it might not be 100% true. I've got pretty good confirmation that Boris Johnson tore up a peace proposal a month into this conflict, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. I'm going to stop because I do want you to share your side, and I apologize for how I'm not very good at communicating exactly the questions, but there are dissonances, but I think we both care, and I think we don't want anyone hurt.
Right.
So I'm going to hit mute, and I thank you so much for.
Oh no, I don't want you to just mute. But I see you have the Putin line down perfectly. This is exactly the way to go from Putin's point of view. It's all NATO's encroachment on Russia. That's the problem. It's not about the Maidan in Ukraine, and it's not. Ukrainians aren't fighting for themselves. They're fighting for.
The Maidan when Yevchenko was removed by the C-14 and the right faction. I'm sorry, the Nazi Ukraine faction that put that Azov battalion in, and then
I happen to. I don't agree with you on the details there. I don't think you seem to know. For someone who was not there, and the people that you're talking about, I'm not sure they're that familiar with what was going on at the Maidan. I'm
pretty sure they weren't familiar. They were just patsies and pawns. I mean,
well, put it this way. I'll put this forward to you, okay? If you don't speak Ukrainian, you might know Russian, but if you don't speak Ukrainian, you don't get a full picture of what's going on in Ukraine. You have, it's like me trying to tell you what's going on in, like Brazil. I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese, forgive me, Portuguese. I can read all the books you want about Brazil, but unless I know Portuguese, I can't get all the details. I'm not sure I can get them all right. And that's a big problem with people writing about Ukraine. They really
Well,
do
about
not
this
know.
one though, I can speak to the actions of the United States. I don't need a single word uttered
Okay.
other than a
Well, put it this way.
continuous
Let's start
addition
with
and
let's
feeding of
start with
military
the
equipment
initial
into Ukraine.
let's start with the initial question. Was it right for the United States to enter the war in World War II and fight against Hitler?
The judgment call. As
Okay,
I'd be less interventionist, but
that
we
okay.
also pushed Japan to attack us
Mhm.
with an 8-point letter that
Okay.
systematically, once again, cornered them, a rabid animal, into a place where they felt desperate, and they attacked Pearl Harbor, giving us an excuse to go into the war. I mean, I can go back to the creation of the Fed in 1913, and oh my gosh, the Great War started in 1914. What a shocker that the funds are all it's all connected, that the war is funded and the banks fund the war. We are fodder to these
Okay.
forces. And I wish that more of us would see that we are the fodder, not
Okay.
not not the enemy that attack us
Okay.
in
My
this
my
business.
argument is Hitler was evil, dead evil. There was no good evil. There was no good Hitler. We had to be in the war with Hitler. We had to defeat him. But there was another guy equally as evil. His name was Stalin. We didn't
Yeah,
fight Stalin. Stalin was
no.
never brought to justice. He was never paid for his, you know, for example, the Holodomor, 4 million people, you know, starved to death.
And
Just one.
Stalin was an absolute dictating piece of crap.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny that, but I would also argue that Russia probably turned the tides of the war. And if it wasn't for
No,
Russia,
what turned the
well,
tides of the
Germany
world?
turning on Russia, if it wasn't for Germany turning on Russia and then attacking the way they did, Russia lost what, 30 million. I mean,
No,
I'm
Russia
they,
didn't. Ukraine lost 10 million.
they
Ukraine lost.
absolutely did. And how many of those fought on the side of the Nazis against on the Nazis? I mean, how are we
There
backing
were
the
people.
Nazis,
There were
sir?
people.
I just don't understand that. And I
There were,
understand Russia bad, but Russia's not the communists of Russia, I would argue. And Putin is not Stalin by any
well,
means.
seems to glorify Stalin. He loves Stalin. He
Yes,
thinks
and
that's fine.
yeah, sure. Uh, okay, they glory. Yes, they speak of the glory land because they hearken to that
Yeah.
propagandist talk that they try to, that nationalistic thing that we do too, right? I mean,
Well,
we
put it
all have
this way.
those. I appreciate that. So thank you.
Put it
Please
this
continue.
way. There are genocides taking place in Ukraine today. Genocide. Now you can say, well, that's that problem. It's their problem, not our problem. I don't live my life that way. I can't live my life
Right.
that way. I don't
So,
think
are
you
you
do.
supporting Israel in this time against Gaza? Because there's a genocide going on
I
there.
do support Israel insofar as the genocide that took place that broke out the war. But I'm also mindful of the measure of response that came from Israel as well. I'm
Measured response of the majority of people that are dead are under 14 years old. Is that a measured
I'm
response, sir?
saying that I'm critical of the fact that it was not a measured response. It
Okay. And
needed to
I
be.
want to also be clear. War is absolute hell.
Yeah, it is.
Can we both we're both going to be in agreement with that, sir.
Oh,
You and
absolutely.
I do not want this war thing.
Exactly right.
I'm just finding we talk about peace through strength. We talk about we keep escalating. People do not understand. Blowback is the only thing that people understand. We just got a report back from Anthony Blinken who said Hamas has not lost numbers. They have not seen a reduction. You know why? Because 10 minus 2 equals 20,
Yeah,
because their cousins, their uncles, their nephews that watch this innocent child blown up, that's what radicalizes them. To think it's more than religious or ideological. If you watch your child die, you will change your life. I
that's true.
guarantee it. So we speak of genocides on this side, which are absolutely happening, but
Right.
we defend the genocide on the other. And I apologize. I was a grade A neocon in the 90s, sir. I enlisted in the military. I had a "Hey Saddam, this Scud for You" T-shirt. Okay, and now all I watch is a destabilization by
Yeah.
our government. Libya included, the largest sex
Do you,
slaves or the
let me
largest
ask
slave
you this,
market in Libya.
Mark, how do you look at Trump? And I know we're getting into politics, and I don't want to
Yes.
be overly.
Oh, no. I'm happy to
Okay,
share, and we're having a conversation here.
yeah,
My animation is out of passion as is yours. This
yeah.
is just a really grateful conversation. I'm
I'm
just happy to
curious
have
on
it.
how you see Trump. Is he a positive figure in your world, or not a
He's
not?
dangerous.
He's
I immediately caution of his danger, and I'll tell you why. It's
yeah,
very simple. All he did, because he's not different. These are two wings of the same bird. He's
yeah.
shifting from Russia to China and Iran. That is horrible. That is awful rhetoric.
Mm.
China, Iran did not have that assassination attempt against him at all. There is not a single shred of that being the case. Trying to use that Soleimani bomb drone strike from 10 years ago, whatnot, absolutely ridiculous, or 8 years ago, is absolutely ridiculous. Now, that all said, Trump was a net less bad decision. I voted Republican every year since 1992,
Okay.
Trump twice, 16 and 20. I voted NOTA this year. I have stepped away from voting for the president,
Who'd you
and
vote?
I
Who'd you vote
excuse
for?
me,
Did you vote for a president?
none of the above, NOTA. Yeah. So now that I'm in this space where I speak critically, I can speak very freely about both sides and be honest and not be beholden to a side.
You're a libertarian, are you?
I am rapidly becoming NCAP almost to, to not anarchist, not anarcho, but agorist, voluntarist. It's certainly libertarian minded.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And this is the point. War may be profitable, but peace is prosperous.
yes.
Okay. Now, I know about our military, and I know that our military, those people at the top, get paid so well and handsomely for our contribution to that. But all that does is devastate other countries. Like, it's our chemicals and bombs. We admonish a country for cluster bombs, and then we let Ukraine use them to poison their own breadbasket. They offer the world such abundance of food, and now it is poisoned with mines and just think
You
about the
know that
munitions and the toxins.
Russia stole Ukrainian wheat and then sold it to Africa, arguing that Ukraine was not going to be feeding them, and this is their wheat.
And that's wrong.
Yeah,
100% wrong. Look, I'm happy to look. This Putin is not a good dude.
right.
But I
Who
watch,
is a
and for
good dude,
example,
though? Who's a
oh,
good
go ahead.
dude for you?
Oh no, it's impossible. I mean, do you have to be at that level? I would assume everyone has something on their hands. I can't imagine.
Yeah, but
There's a realism there, right? There's a
who's a
realism there.
leader that you know admire, or like
If
who?
I were to admire, it would be Ron Paul, Thomas Massey.
Ron
Yeah,
Paul.
and if you look at what happened with Thomas Massey, the day after his birthday, they remove him from the Rules Committee.
Yeah.
Why? Because he refused to vote with Mike Johnson
Hmm.
and to continually fund the things that we, as Americans, don't find that in the interest to do so.
Yeah.
Now, I would argue that we okay, so we have okay, I'll leave it there because I'm very much enjoying your input on it. So please share a little bit more about you, but share more about your perspective about what, obviously where tell me where Putin obviously went wrong and what he
Oh,
did, and tell me
I'll
your
tell
steps
you.
from your
Sure, I'll give
perspective.
you. I'm going to simplify it, okay? It's like this. You're sitting at home watching TV. Someone breaks in the front door, grabs a chair, sits down, says to you, "This is my home." You say, "No, no, this is my home." He says, "No, no, it's my home." Wait a minute. Why would it be your home? Oh, because many, many years ago, the people who lived in this house had a son who moved from this house and moved over to my house. And for that reason, I now have a claim on this house. That's the argument that Russia's posing for invading Ukraine.
Is
That,
that not the exact argument that Israel makes?
I don't know about Israel, but it's certainly the argument Russia's making.
Well, this is where it becomes a challenge because it once again, sir, this isn't to we do not know. I'm not here to character assassinate anyone, but there's a hypocrisy when Israel is more than welcome to walk into any house and just take it. And now that is an affront that Russia did that. And they're both wrong. They're both absolutely wrong. but
Well,
I
well,
find it very interesting that we're defending and funding one side of it and funding the other side of it.
oh, no, no.
You know,
Okay,
you know.
this is okay. I prefer to argue things by theater, not by, this theater, that theater, that theater.
Oh,
But
certainly.
I'll go to your argument for you just so you're satisfied, okay? There's nothing wrong with Israelis wanting to create an Israeli state in Israel and have it and defend it and live there and defend themselves. But the problem is from how it started, like, Exodus and the story of the Israel, the Jews during World War II and the concentration camps and so on. There's a hell of a moral argument there for supporting them and trying to find a place that's peaceful and accommodating for them. And yes, they have this religious attachment to the Palestinian lands, but are they the same people that were there, 1,000 years ago? There are subjects or talks like that. But I understand them. If I was
And
Jewish, probably I would feel this way also, that there's got to be
and
a place for me
yeah.
there somewhere.
Yeah, and I know we got completely off track. I apologize. I'm just worse because I connect all the patterns. See, I don't see it. These are not separate incidents to me. These are all just orchestrated events by very incompetent people at the top, in my opinion. So this is just just my
Well,
viewpoint
are
on
they
it.
all
So,
connected in
so
your
to,
view?
put a pin on it, if you haven't, I recommend watching Martyr Maid's Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem. It's a
Okay.
25-hour podcast
Wow.
that, and this is for the audience as well. It's
Oh,
a 25-hour podcast that takes the perspective from a Palestinian and a Jewish person and constantly asks, what would you do? That's all the questions are. It does not provide an answer. It just provides things and asks what you would do. It's a brilliant thing by Martyr Maid, Daryl Cooper. He's brilliant. So Russia, Ukraine, please, please,
okay. Well,
could you share where the beginning for you happened, where Russia began its peace, if you could?
all right. Well, 300 years ago, along the story I told you, like, Russia's a country that has expanded militarily, and, it's all about taking territory and expanding that way. I mean, I'm not a historian. I'm not going to be able to give you all the particulars, but from my understanding I can refer you to Yuri, the Ukrainian Institute at Harvard, who can give you the full story if you want it.
Right. Well, I
Uh,
was just trying to kind of get it more truncated, maybe the
yeah,
last
sure,
20
sure,
or
sure.
so years, just to
But,
help kind
put
of
it
probably
this
with
way.
your, yeah.
Put it this way. My family who lives in Ukraine was this family living, watching TV when some guy broke in the house and said, "Hey, this is our house now." Wait a minute, this is not your house, it's our house. That's essentially what's going on. Is following World War II, everybody seemed to agree, okay, these are the boundaries. You want to change the boundaries? You do it peacefully. You don't take a machine gun or a tank and charge in. And they did. And America's involved because they promised, look, you surrender your. If Ukraine had not surrendered the nuclear arsenal, I don't think we would have a war today. But they did, and
Right.
America
I
promised.
can argue that because Libya did the same thing. Gaddafi also stepped down his program, and
Yeah.
we saw what happened there.
So
And so that makes a lot of sense. Now, what may I ask? What are arguments specifically about the NATO expansion into Ukraine? So this is, from what I understand, 2014 is where, Yevchenko, well, 2008, I think Yevchenko's gone,
yeah,
which the Euromaidan, right? So now we've got 14. There was another change, and that was pushed by a group within the Ukrainian government that Putin took. It
offense.
seemed like a knee jerk when he jumped into Crimea there under Obama, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think he actually understood what he did. I think he just actually reacted and then thought about it. I think it did seem premature, in my opinion, as a
Well, he seemed
big
to take
mistake.
offense to the Maidan and all the stuff that was going on in the Maidan. the place where you and I may not agree on is Ukraine is not a country that's getting paid to go out and march and sit in 20-degree below weather for 4 months protesting the government and what Putin is doing because of a payment. These guys, the people who are out on the front defending the front right now, they're not fighting for NATO and for America to to take over Ukraine or to somehow, like, it's an impossible argument to argue that these people are fighting because they want a country free from Russian interference. They want to live in a Ukrainian country ruled by Ukrainians for Ukrainians and in a democracy similar in kind to what's in Eastern Europe or Western Europe, like Poland or France or whatever, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, what those guys on the front are fighting for.
And once again, a person's fight that they believe for their homeland is one thing.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I think the United States are manipulating the Ukrainian people in this way because of they pushed and made the Ukrainians the pawns, unfortunately.
Well,
so let me ask.
No, hold it.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Ukrainians didn't take on this fight because America said, hey, go fight out in the front.
No, but I would argue that the United States encroachment of Russia caused a reactive, incorrect, unlawful, unjust war launched on Ukraine by Russia. That Ukraine is just the proxy. That Ukraine is the proxy between two superpowers.
Why would Russia have the right to invade Ukraine?
They don't have the right, sir. They do not have the right to do this.
Okay, so
this isn't justified.
No NATO, then there would be no NATO encroachment. It's only because Russia
just the threat of NATO. This once again, some people can be compelled to do very bad decisions. I would argue that Hitler overstepped. Yes, I would argue that now, but I would let me ask you this. So these are a couple questions because
sure.
The threat was that Putin would take Ukraine and then run roughshod over Europe. Is that your concern, or do you think he just wants Ukraine? Do you think he just wants the East? What? Please, I'm just asking for you where you might think his mindset would be, because I would argue he has zero interest in global domination the way he thinks he could. He just could not do that, and that's just a ridiculous trope that should be taken off the table almost immediately, in my opinion. So I'd love for you to share about those things, what he's capable of doing, what he could do, what do you think he wants to do, and all those things.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's not Putin. It's Russia. Most people think it's Putin. It's not Putin. It's Russia.
So you're talking about the oligarchs and the ones actually pushing
the Russian population. The surveys show majority of Russians support the war. They want the war in Ukraine. And they want the restoration of the Russian imperial empire. I like, if you think when Ukraine loses, if it loses, that will finish the war, you got to give your head a shake. That's just the beginning of the war.
Yeah, I don't see there being peace in this.
Ukraine will be absorbed, and the army, the soldiers will be absorbed into the Red Army. And what's next? Moldova, Baltic states, Poland, and so on.
So you do think that's what's going to happen? You think that Poland's
why it is because he's stolen so much money. He has to have a foreign. He can't have an internal focus on what's going on in Russia. Putin is the richest guy in the world, not Elon Musk. Putin is the richest guy in the world, and he's stolen it all with his crony oligarchs. And they need.
So you're not concerned. I mean, you don't think Putin's concern is he goes into Poland? I mean, one step into Poland and Article 5 triggered with NATO. He's not interested in that. I can't imagine him possibly wanting that.
Once he gets Ukraine down, because he can see NATO is falling apart as we speak, in a sense.
Yeah.
Because there's not the unity there that, there is unity. And thankfully, so far, they've been able to line up and support Ukraine. But if Ukraine were to falter, your kids and my kids, if you have kids, will be fighting in Europe because of Article 5, for sure, for sure. And we may end up fighting in Europe, or I don't know what, with rifles running around our streets. I mean, this is far fetched, but
Yeah.
if you think it's just, let's just cut off a piece of territory, give it to Putin, and the war's over. They're not fighting about territory and a piece of land. Putin is fighting to eradicate Ukraine completely. Guys like me, he wants out. Shoot me, kill me, or whatever, and other people like me, especially the ones in Ukraine. He wants to.
Well, I'm sorry for your family and everything, and all the people and all your relatives. That's absolutely horrible. There's nothing good about any of that.
Yeah.
I
Now, guys like you,
I think that strategically he just wants a land bridge to Sevastopol, and that's it. And he's clearly built his battle lines to just take that whole section. It's locked down. He hasn't advanced in months. He's just been holding the territory
he's been
where in that area, and I just see that being the case.
okay.
And it's obviously we've seen a World War I type
These are
kind of meat
beliefs,
grinder right now.
who can say whose belief is right and whose is wrong, I guess,
Right.
in this conversation.
Right. Well, I look at the actions and I look at strategically on a map
Yeah.
how he's set up his defenses, his fortifications. It would appear to me, and there is a clear line that he has drawn militarily through his piece. And I do know he went to Kyiv first. I understand that, but I would have done the same, because if you get Kyiv, they are at least at your knee.
Yeah.
He could not even cover that land militarily. He couldn't possibly occupy that. He knows that. He just needed them to bend. And it's like I said, it's my opinion that we intervened in that. And I think there would have been a resolution very early. And my heart goes out to the hundreds of thousands, 500,000, million on total on both sides, not just the ones that are alive who don't function the way they were.
No. Hold it. This is not a moral equivalent. The Russian soldiers that are committing the genocide.
No, absolutely not. Yes, absolutely. The aggressors get less of a. Sir, I'm a rational individual. I'm a non-aggression person. If you come at me, you know what? I'll take some, but I'll give more. Okay, and
you're prepared to defend yourself if someone attacks you.
100%. And I do not disagree with the Ukrainian ideology to defend themselves.
Yeah.
That is not it. But it is my opinion that it would be much different without certain means where they get just enough to provoke things, but not enough to actually win or push back or things like that.
There's an argument there that we share. They're not getting enough support. You're right.
And you think you want to get right, and you want to.
But you think abolish all the support. I'm saying give them more support.
Right, you're saying give them more. I understand, and I wholeheartedly disagree, because a no-fly zone would create other issues. Because then you talk about border sovereignty right now. We let ATACMS be fired into Russia, so we've already lost that battle. Everything we said we wouldn't do, we've slowly done more and more. And if it's going to be that anyway, then why not do it at the beginning? I guess is the defense. My defense is, why do any of it to start? But
you do it because your principles call upon. I think you're a principled individual.
I'm a very principled individual, yes.
So your principles, somewhere in there's got to be a principle about individual freedom.
Yeah.
Now
there is, and I would absolutely encourage the Ukrainian people to fight to every last breath.
You fight with Ukrainians for their freedom.
If I were aggressed upon, I would defend myself.
What if your neighbor was aggressed upon? Would you defend your neighbor?
If my neighbor and I have a relationship and we have that agreement, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. We have an agreement. It's called the Budapest Accord.
We do. Yeah, but we also had the Maidan Agreement, which Angela Merkel signed. She said it was just so they can fortify the defenses in Ukraine and stall. Yeah. It wasn't to actually create peace. So, okay.
I'll put it this way.
I mean, we could go tit for tat, and we can. And sir, obviously, you speak Ukrainian. I cannot. I am but a humble researcher,
Right.
okay? All I know is I
But
came
you're
from the
quite
war side,
knowledgeable, though. You
you
are
know?
quite
I
knowledgeable.
I came from the war side. I absolutely understand it. If I felt very I'll be honest, I felt very out of my league when you agreed to this conversation because I thought you had seen what I might be talking about, but you roll absolutely with these punches. You're an intelligent you're an
You
attorney.
know what?
You
This
have
book here,
there
if
you
you
go.
take a look at my book, A Promise Kept, there's a history in there that you might find worthwhile in terms of explaining what's going on in Ukraine. Um, and like, here's what I like about you. I like that I know you love freedom. I know freedom is important to you because of your sort of libertarian leanings. And I know that you are um, anti-war, that you, wherever someone's invading improperly or whatever, as you've expressed, you've said that you are opposed to that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Where you and I slightly differ is in the area of what America is all about. I honor and I love the Declaration of Independence and that philosophy.
As
As
do I. By the way, I was born in Philadelphia.
as I know
So
you
I am the home of the Liberty Bell, my friend.
yeah, you do. I know you love it. But what you appear to be, where we're parting ways, is over the issue of to what extent should America be involved in what's going on over there. And you clearly,
Or anywhere, to be completely frank, if I may, I'd be I it's the imperial nature of the United States
yeah,
about against which I have complete criticisms.
yeah,
It is not the tenets, the culture, the American way, none of those. It's the American way that I feel is being under attack with the imperial nature that we started to adopt from Britain. I mean,
right.
we became the replacement of that, and that's what I'm more heartbroken, to be honest. So,
Let me ask you about things like the way the Indian population in America was treated, the black, the slavery and all that, the war with Mexico. These would be things that you object to, also, right? Those were things
I
about America's
yeah.
history.
Absolutely would object to
Also,
these.
you're not
We
a
also we also and if I may though, we also as we did these things and as we learned how evil we were as people, we did start adopting. We did get the Geneva Convention after Dresden, for example, and then we commit Dresden in Israel. It's like or in Gaza. It's those things. It is those things. We are all culpable, and I want to be completely honest with you, and you and I are I think you are a completely honest actor.
yeah,
First of all, you are Ukrainian.
yeah,
I can only imagine your people are being attacked,
yeah.
and my heart absolutely feels for you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to understand that I'd love to save your people because my concern now is the draft age lowers from 26 and there are gonna be no more beautiful Ukrainian babies left.
Well,
There's gonna be no daddies.
argument. The problem in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, is not about how old the soldiers in Ukraine should be in order to fulfill the army requirements. There's over Ben Hodges. You need to spend more time listening to Ben Hodges, the general.
I'm familiar.
He's got this down pretty good. There's like 1 million guys out there that they could be recruited right now that are of the certain age that are required to be out in the war. The problem is arms. You're not going to recruit people and not give them the arms necessary to fight the
I would
war.
agree, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a big problem
I
for us.
understand.
But
Yeah.
but
So,
in
could
terms
you
of
I'm sorry,
liberty,
if I may, Andy, could you
sure.
show that book again? Per
Oh
Justin,
yeah,
what was
it's
the books
called
you
A
got? Yeah,
Promise Kept, a
A
tribute
Promise
to a
Kept.
mother's love.
Excellent.
And I think you'd find it. I don't know if I don't mean to be arrogant to tell you what books you have to read and so on.
Oh, no, no, we love to hear that. We
Yeah,
love the recommendation, and this is the point. You have gifted your time with me, a complete stranger, unknowingly, and this is I mean, the beauty of this technology is that we're talking in 2 different countries about 5 different countries
yeah,
and possible solutions. You know, I mean, it's just a beautiful thing that we're able to engage in them.
One of
We're
the great
fortunate.
benefits of this discussion is you're giving me a really good workout, a mental, intellectual workout. And I don't have all my arms with me here to be able
I
to.
did warn you, sir. I did warn you, and I made sure not to bring any of mine either. I
I
didn't want to bring out the. I didn't want to have it at the ready.
you have, which is great. It's really great. I'm so happy you're reading about it. Um, I'm a little disturbed by the degree to which you seem to have lined up with Putin and in terms of arguments and stuff. But otherwise, like it's been a gem of an argument here. Um, we would probably need,
as I would say for you as well, because I find the talking points the exact 180. Except,
what we
and the thing is, you are the advocate because you are Ukrainian. I mean, you
yes,
absolutely add a credibility to this. I'm certainly not glib with anyone about this,
yeah.
but at least of all, someone who's a part of this plight of the invasion. You are a direct,
My challenge
victim of
is
this
every day across the screen I get news about what's going on in the front. It's hard to not be informed about what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, I'll just share this with you, Mark. Ukraine is going to win this war, believe it or not. It will. And the reason is because they're fighting for principles like Americans fought for independence. It's not about, piece of land, a tank or, $5,000. It's fighting about their future and their existence as a free and, equal people with everybody else in Europe, etc.
And I want the people in Ukraine who want to fight for their freedom to
Yeah,
win. I want everyone who's fighting for their freedom to win.
yeah.
I just don't want other people to be outside influences unnecessarily when it might not be 100% organic.
I,
Certainly not this case.
I,
Ukraine and Russia do not like each other.
okay.
We know this. This is not
I would ask you to be careful about lining yourself up with Putin's like one of the war. Okay, this is the final area I want to touch with.
Oh, please, yeah. And thank you again for joining me, Andy. Andy, before your last piece, please share all your information after your final thought, and then
Sure.
we'll happily call it a day. Thank you again.
I just want to say that there's the war, the military, there's a diplomatic war, and there's a disinformation war. And Putin is winning the disinformation war because he's sharing a false narrative, in my opinion. Like the narrative you're talking about is straight out of Putin's war book. It's all about NATO and there's a guy named Kuleba who was the foreign minister of Ukraine who's put out a video just not long ago. You can look it up on YouTube. Kuleba, the foreign minister of Ukraine, in which in 5 minutes he destroys the argument you're making. And
what I'd argue though is the Hunter laptop that 51 people signed says signs of Russian disinformation. Those are American agents that said that the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation, and that was factual. So, two sides can be wrong or lie or both, right? I mean,
I don't know. Does Hunter's laptop have anything to do with Ukraine?
Yes, it actually does, because all the Burisma allegations and the cutout that they have.
The argument is that he served on a board.
But the State Department, 51 CIA deep state agents of the United States said it was Russian disinformation. So I could say that any information coming from a side is those talking points, right? I'm just saying, just like mine are Putin talking points and Putin propaganda, I can absolutely say the same for the other side. Now, the thing is, I don't justify Putin for doing this. This is awful. This is an absolutely thing. But just to say that there's no culpability on certain behalf, that's incorrect. And all I care about is your people. I really, truly care about. I do not want Putin to have any land. I want Putin to lease. I want him to lease the land from Ukraine, like they had agreed for 70 years or whatever.
Do you care about America's promise to Ukraine that if they surrender the nuclear weapons, that America will support the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine?
It is my opinion that the United States used that to get them to demilitarize, and that they could use them as a pawn for future growth of NATO, because they talked about the NATO expansion, which was a defensive pact against the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. It's not designed to be this governmental entity. It was a defensive pact, which there was how much honest instability was there in the non-Eastern European countries. Only within those countries was there instability, not in Germany or France or Poland, not militarily.
Okay, well, Budapest was in 1994, long after the Soviet Union fell apart.
Hmm.
So I'm just asking you, do you are you ready to honor America's commitment to Ukraine that if they surrender their nuclear weapons, that America will defend its sovereignty?
I would not have made that promise as an American.
Yeah,
So
but
I
they,
can't. America did. So I can't. Once again, I'm not going to. I'm certainly going to concede the point because it's happened.
yeah.
But my argument is these are the instigations that led to this ultimate retort by Putin, if that makes sense.
Well,
And
no, it doesn't. What makes
so
sense?
yeah,
You make a
we
promise.
made pacts with many countries over these years. I'm looking in hindsight now and finding that many should maybe not have been made. Many were beneficial. What didn't work. We're still figuring this out as history writes itself, right? As we get more information.
Well, the way I would put it is keep your word. Like, I don't know if that's something that's important to you, but it is to me.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a life and death word, and it's about nuclear arms promise. It's
Would
not.
you have kept your word to Yeltsin and Putin about not moving an inch east and then putting all those military and weapons east?
You have that wrong. Well, first of all, if
No,
there
I'm sorry,
was
I do not have that wrong. That was in 1991, not
yeah,
1 inch east by Herbert Walker Bush
wait a minute. Excuse
and
me.
Baker.
1991 was when the Soviet Union existed. The
Yes,
Soviet Union does not exist anymore. That was a
sir.
promise to the
In night,
Soviet Union.
so
If there was a promise.
that's a defunct promise and a collapsing team when we got the unipolar moment. That's okay as the
No,
winning
first
side.
of all, I'm not sure there was a promise. In
Well,
fact,
well, I'll
hang
there's
on, hang
one
on.
promise.
Let me make
Okay,
this point.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
the person who was involved was the former head of the Soviet Union, the guy. Okay,
Yes,
the
I've
Slav,
got the names, and they I know I'm not. The
uh,
names are just going to be too much, but I can tell you that James Baker
yeah,
is the one who made those promises.
yeah,
And it was even about moving weapons into East Germany after the wall
he was
collapsed in
asked.
'89.
What's his name? I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name, but he was asked if there was a promise. He said no. The guy who just uh, the alter the alter ego to Yeltsin, the guy who was in charge of the Soviet Union at the time. Come on, what's his name?
I'd have to look it up in the literature.
I'm
I
drawing a
don't know,
blank.
sir.
He's not.
Pravutsin or no
No, no,
Pravatska?
no, no, no.
I apologize. Yeah, it's certainly so. Okay, so we are slightly. I'll concede the point that we're in disagreement on that. We made verbal promises to commitments as well that I feel like we reneged upon. I mean,
Yeah,
once again, I think, and once again, I think we're just a difference of opinion on these little.
Gorbachev.
Oh, Gorbachev. Yes,
Gorbachev
Gorbachev.
stated that there was no promise. Gorbachev.
I have citations, and I'm happy to share them. I'll send them to you. I'll send whatever PDF piece about this.
I'll send
But I
you.
can tell you where the Baker
I have
promises,
an
the
article
H.W.
of
Bush
that.
promises, Zabrinsky, all of them. I can do
Yeah,
that
but
as
the
well.
Soviet Union. This is Russia. This is
So
Russia.
that's okay then. As when we became the unipolar moment,
Well,
and
there
we
was a
had other
Warsaw Pact
control, and
at
they were
the time.
crumbling.
There was a Warsaw Pact at the time. It's not.
Yes,
It's a
but
promise to a
everything was
Warsaw
crumbling.
Pact. There's no Warsaw
Was
Pact since
Poland's one of the
'94.
first countries to join. Poland's one of the first Eastern European countries to join NATO, along with the Czech Republic and Hungary. It's the first three to join, and that's Warsaw Pact is dissolved at that point. Would you not argue that because Poland
Well,
was part of it?
it
So
was dissolved.
so
The
I mean,
promises were made to this. If there were promises, that were made to the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, which was dissolved. And
So that okay.
that's
Okay.
all that's
So
all
it's
baloney
more of a
because
semantics thing then. I mean, it's
Finland,
not a
listen,
people of Russia,
Finland,
like it's not a people that we can honor a commitment to a people.
Finland
We
and
know that
Sweden, they weren't, listen, Finland and Sweden are today NATO members. So Russia's got no problem with that, but she's got a problem.
only in response to their aggressive acts into Ukraine, which they probably accept that as a consequence of what they're doing in Ukraine. That's what I would argue. I don't know that, but I
Yeah,
would say, yeah, well, Finland and Sweden's not part of us anyway. We don't give a flying F because they're pretty much protected. To think Finland wasn't protected by NATO if something were to happen, that I think we would have absolutely protected Finland. I would argue even
meaning the
before
United
NATO
States would have.
formed. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Because it would have caused I absolutely would have been Swede's agreement with Finland or Poland's agreement with Finland or somebody. So, sir, I am so grateful. Thank you again. Let's end. This has been excellent. I actually have learned a lot
So have I.
because you shared a lot of different perspectives with me. I'm going to listen to this thing about 50 times because
Sure.
I need to break this all down. Could you please share the book about the book that you wrote, all those pieces, and then if you could email me a link, I'm happy to put that in a piece so we can
I'll do
promote your
that.
work as well.
I'll do that. Love
Thank you so
talking to
much.
you, Mark. That's great. I never expected
Thank you.
this conversation, but it was a hell of a
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah. So see, tell us a little bit. Last thing, close off all the things about yourself. Please show that book one more time for my friend Justin. And thank you so much again for your time. I'm
Okay.
so grateful.
There's a book, A Promise Kept, a tribute to a mother's love. It's a history of my mother's life, but in there's the history of Ukraine and so on. So you'll see a lot there. There's also this book. I'll just add, and this is not for sale. I'm not pushing these books. You don't have to buy them. But I'll tell you, in this book, Solomia, Star of Opera's Golden Age, there's an even fuller history of Ukraine, and you'll see some of the background that is playing out today in terms of the conflict, the war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Nice talking to you, Mark. I'll send
Thank
you
you.
what I have, and
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
yeah,
And please, once again, to your people, I hope peace. I hope you get to keep everything. I do hope, for your people that your people win your liberty and your freedom as much as possible, sir.
I saw a film once of a guy's talking to a Hell's Angel, and the Hell's Angel is saying, "Oh well, what are you doing?" and all this, and the guy says, "I love you, man," and the Hell's Angel says, "Well, that's very nice to say, but are you prepared to prove it?"
Exactly right.
It's the same
Very good.
thing here.
Touche, Andy. You got me, my friend.
Anyway, take care.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna hit end here, and then we'll just do a quick chat, but we'll
Sure,
close
sure.
it out.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Semotiuk, Andy Semotiuk. Is that correct,
Right.
Andy?
Right.
Excellent. Justin says thank you. Let's put that up. Thank you, Mr. Semotiuk. I know that Zach was also grateful. Thank you again. It's been great, everyone.
Okay.
I've got another podcast in 45 minutes with the real SNS, wethefemale.net. Everybody jump back on in 45 minutes. I have to reset my brain. It is going to melt right now. Andy, thank you again. Have a great day, sir.